Hello friends, family, and people of the internet. So I'm making this video because I would like to tell you about the website that I've been working on called freedomoftheoppressed.us, and I thought that a video would be the best way to explain, why I decided to do it and what it's all about. So it kind of started on accident with just different hobbied interests, I guess I would call it, that I've had. I've always been a huge History Channel nerd. I love learning about world history and how different cultures and countries have come to exist and how they've interacted with each other throughout time, space, different conspiracies, and different ideas of what's out there and what has created the world into what it is today. Psychology, how people work, what makes people move, and spirituality and stuff like that. So pretty recently, after doing all of this random research and digging on different topics, I kind of had this come together moment where all of the seemingly random topics that I've been interested in for my whole life kind of came together and all formed this giant story. And I had this moment of clarity where I felt like, wow, I really need to share this because it's, once you see the story, it makes a lot more sense, and it's a story that I don't think many people are told or even realizes out there or is able to be found. And that's kind of when I started getting a little bit more interested in politics, because I realized how vital of a role that it played in all of these different areas and what we know and what we are exposed to and what we don't know, more importantly. And the biggest point that I found there was that it's not actually about the left versus the right like they would want you to believe, or one group against another, but those are more so just relatively small distractions to keep you from looking at or finding and discussing with other people some of the bigger issues that are out there, the underlying societal and, even more importantly, systematic issues that impact every single one of us, not just here in the United States, but throughout the world, to a degree, whether or not you even realize that it's happening or that it affects you, or how much of a role that you play in some of the systematic corruption that exists. Some of it can be fixed by the government, but honestly, most of it isn't going to be fixed unless we can expose the corruption and uncover it and be able to talk about it and have conversations about it together as not just individual people, well, most importantly as individual people, and empower people to do something about it and realize that we're not powerless as a society, because I think a lot of people have this feeling of, oh no, there's nothing that we can do to change things, but really there is a lot, and there's a lot of change happening right now that the media won't necessarily tell you is going on. And so I decided that I needed to share, I guess, what I found with anyone who would listen, which is why I've started to become a little bit more vocal on my beliefs, but not to say this website is not very political at all, but my tweets just kind of come out that way because it does have a big impact on the direction that things are going to move. But I decided to form Freedom of the Press to give people a platform where they could explore different issues and human rights issues, societal issues, corrupt systems, and just different levels of reality, I guess, outside of the headlines, and have a place where what they're reading can take them back to better resources to keep researching and stuff like that. So those are a few of the things that I like to discuss in terms of human rights issues. Like, a lot of people don't realize or don't want to accept that sex trafficking is a huge problem that impact in our society, and right here in the United States, that runs within so many different major powerful groups that you would never expect it to be happening in, and the people who talk about it are silenced. Or labor trafficking, which, even if that's not as big here in the United States, but it's happening in other countries where our companies go in and a majority of the products that we buy are tainted by these people who are living quite literally in modern day slavery or being put through horrendous conditions to make these products that we buy cheaply and allow ourselves to just not think twice about it, even though it's paining them and quite frankly it's destroying our own economy as well. Or different social issues like women's rights throughout the world. There's some countries where women can still be killed for not being faithful to their husbands, or they're not allowed to drive or buy a house or have anywhere near the same fundamental basic rights as men. Or in other countries, there quite literally people can be killed or taken to jail or forced into these labor camps for practicing the wrong religion, being the wrong race, or just disagreeing with their government and realizing that a lot of the countries, or not a lot, but many of the countries we interact with are still taking advantage of their people in ways like this. Like we're seeing the uprising in Hong Kong because they don't want to be controlled by China and put their people in the same risks that those people are facing over there. And then we go and we buy all of our products from, a lot of them are tainted by this labor trafficking or these terrible rights for workers, and we just call it their problem, even though really we're over here facilitating it with every cheap plastic thing that we buy from Walmart. Other things like societal issues like manufactured division and the role that the media plays on how we think and feel and act as individuals, which leads me to corrupt systems. So the media, in the sense that the 6 companies own 90% of the media. So that's not just the news, that's not just, oh, they own CNN, Fox, MSNBC, ABC, they own all that, but they actually own almost every single TV show that you watch on every single channel of cable. They own all of the movies, so think about all of the actors and actresses speaking out for whatever causes it is that they speak out on. They're all run by these 6 corporations, which also own even sports. They own a lot of the sports teams. Disney now owns ESPN. They own all of the music. So pretty much all of Hollywood, the record labels, the radio stations, everything that you hear, all of these talk show personalities, whether on the radio or on TV, all of it is owned by 6 companies that own these millions of sub-companies that just market things a little bit differently, but really at the end of the day, they're all working for their same one cause, stuff like that. Or the government is clearly a pretty corrupt system, and not just our government, but governments throughout the world, and they go hand in hand with the media, who allows whatever it is that they want to be said. Same thing with Hollywood. They all are these just giant elite systems that don't really have you and I's best intentions at the heart of their businesses, I guess, which is kind of an example of how we live in a broken capitalist society. So a lot of people recently have been putting a lot of criticism on the capitalist economy and blaming it for things, but really if you look over the past 100 years or so, slowly we've been becoming more and more of a socialist society without most people even realizing it or recognizing it or seeing it, because all of these industries that are monopolized, not just the media, but food, health, the chicken from every grocery store that you buy from, restaurant that you eat at, it all is coming from the same places, which in turn doesn't give us a true capitalist society. We're living in the illusion of a capitalist society where the small businesses don't actually have an opportunity to thrive because they're being bought out and recreated and resold by by bigger businesses. Like, for example, moving home, trying to go find a local coffee shop. Whereas when I lived in Lexington, you could find them, there are dozens within a couple city miles. But then I moved back home and I was like, wait, there's literally, I have to drive 25 minutes if I want to drink something other than Starbucks or Dunkin'. So just realizing the impact that that has on our society as a whole, it takes away from the true essence of capitalism and the fact that ordinary people can go and start and make their own businesses. Then lastly, I like to talk about things, I call it the reality check, the making sure that you have a true orientation of yourself and your thoughts and beliefs and stance, and making sure that you're staying true to the essence of who you are and where you're getting your information from, and making sure that you're not just thinking one way or another because of a group you're in or because of something you're taught or something that you heard, and making sure that your reality and your emotions and thoughts are internally driven, that you are your own pioneer, I guess, on your trip. Making sure that you're not being succumbed into societal and social pressures put on to you by media and pop culture or other corrupt systems like the schooling and education system, or the subtle mind control that's being placed on small groups in different cults, or even slowly on society as a whole from these massive organizations. And then lastly, on a spiritual sense, a lot of people, especially the younger generations, are starting to lose their faith in God or hope for a better future in society and stuff. And there's a lot of negativity that circulates in our society, and I think that a lot of it's because we're not allowed to talk about our faith or God freely, and we try to think that we have more control over things than we do, which in some sense we do have more control than we think, but we also need to realize that we can only do that work with the help of God and the higher source. And it doesn't matter, religions are pretty corrupt too, like, so remembering it's really about your relationship with God and the hope for a better future, the realization that there's more to life than all of these big issues. It's really about the day-to-day, living a good life, experiencing a good life, and knowing that this life has a bigger purpose in the grand scheme of society, that there is an afterlife, there is more things, you are doing more important things in this life than maybe sometimes that you realize. And so these are just some of the things that I am trying to get people, I guess, to realize. And I think more and more people every day are waking up to these kind of, having these revelations, discovering the real systems of corruption and realizing that they oppress everybody, not just certain groups of people or people in certain places, people with certain ideals, that it's a system that is meant for all of us as your regular normal people to collapse. And it's not just us, like I said, it's happening throughout the world. It's happening in Asia and South America, Africa, even in many countries in Europe, and a lot of people in the United States too are starting to I guess wake up. The movement is called the Great Awakening, and so that's really what I'm here to write about, is issues like this and trying to get us to move forward as a society, as people throughout the world. And so in doing that, I try to do it differently than the mainstream media does it, because I don't want to just tell you how things work or tell you what you should think or what you should believe. I try to use resources and cite what I'm working on the same way you would a paper. That way you can go through and follow and do your own research and figure out where to start looking, because a lot of times it is hard to find things that disagree with the mainstream narrative because of the different algorithms that Google has, and the first 10 things that pop up are usually all saying the same thing, just worded a little bit differently. So giving you the tools to go and do your own research and findings, as well as fact check for yourself, or just a starting point to keep digging on a topic that you are really passionate about or want to know more about. Because the truth is out there. You just have to get past the echo chamber of the media that only cites itself and the algorithms that only let you see what they want you to see, and find it, because there's a global awakening happening, and I hope that you will be open to the idea and start to look into it and do deeper research yourself. So if you want to check out my website, you can follow it on Twitter at Freedom Oppressed, OPPRESSD. Could only be 15 characters, so there's no E in there. On Twitter, I'll link it right there. Or you can follow us on Facebook at Freedom of the Oppressed, or you can go straight to the website and find more information there at freedomoftheoppressed.us. That's freedomoftheoppressed.us, not .com. And I hope you'll check it out. Thanks for listening.